I'm Dr. Duke with the New American, and I'm joined by one of our favorite guests today, Matt Shea, state representative from Washington State, and a sinner saved by grace, right? And that's a good way to introduce all of us, isn't it, Matt?
It is. Thanks for having me on again, Duke.
Glad to be with you. And so I want to talk first. I know you're a state rep, but you see the implications of what this kind of spending does. Let's talk a little bit for the audience about the HEROES Act, the so-called HERO. I love the acronyms that these progressives give their bills, right? The HEROES Act. Talk a little bit about some of the provisions there, some of the outrageous way that Democrats are trying to exploit this virus for their own political ends.
Yeah, what's a few $1 trillion among friends, right? Not that big. We're throwing trillions of dollars around now like it was millions of dollars only a few years ago, and we're seeing $1 trillion to prevent state layoffs, $200 million for hazard pay for some of our first responders, $25 billion to the Postal Service, which has been an enormous failure over the years. It's just being propped up. And we could go on and on down this list, but the bottom line is where is this money going to come from? Is it just going to come out of thin air, which is what I think a lot of Keynesians are trying to advocate right now, that this just comes out of thin air? But eventually there's a reckoning. Eventually the United States economy is going to have to come to terms with the fact we're never going to be able to repay this so-called debt that has been foisted upon the American people, and we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And also, on top of that, we're continuing failed programs instead of just getting government out of the way and letting freedom be the cure. And today, I think it's very simple just to say we don't need fancy plans and more task forces and another blue ribbon panel. Just get out of the way of the American entrepreneur, unshackle the entrepreneurial spirit in America. And I think the economy recovers immediately, but introducing all of these moral hazards into the economy is just going to lead to further and further problems down the line. And eventually there's going to be a day of reckoning. And quite candidly, I think it's coming very, very soon. I think we're in a period of stagflation where we're going to see inflation of everyday things that people use. For example, meat, pork. We're going to see massive increases in just the daily items that everybody cares about. And we're going to see a decrease in the value of assets as people dump more and more assets onto the market. And so you'll see, and we already are hearing about liquidators that are increasing massively their storage capacity because people aren't going to be able to afford those toys that they took for granted in the past, and even some of their houses too. I think we're going to see a huge glut in the housing market as well.
Boy, that's pretty ominous, and I think you're correct about that. And it seems to me that the single biggest long-standing side effect of the coronavirus is Democrats, this kind of Democrat power being wielded. And certainly there will be a fair share of Rhino Republicans in the Senate and the House that would be tempted to vote for this too. Two of the provisions I want to talk to you about that really get my goat. One, all the money that is going to illegal aliens, right? We have the American worker out of jobs. The employment rate is skyrocketing. That's mostly American workers. And their answer to that is to do very little. One $1,200 check one time to the unemployed American. But you're giving billions of dollars, not just for illegal immigrants who are already here, but to import more foreign workers. Talk about that aspect of this.
Right, and they're absolutely already setting the stage for this, that there's going to be a mass migration to the United States as a result of this coronavirus. They're already prepping the messaging that is out there for this. And yeah, it's a slap in the face to every American worker. We should be taking care of America first. There's no question about that. That's one of the messages that got Trump elected. So why don't we make that actually happen instead of paying for illegal immigrants and actually incentivizing illegal immigration into America, and instead, again, not throw money, trillions of dollars around, just get out of the way of the free market and let Americans take care of this themselves. I've talked to so many individual business owners that have been devastated by this and have just finally said, look, we're going to open up. We don't care what the governor's saying. We're going to be Americans again, because when America is open for business, we're strong. When America is closed for business, we're not. And when we're spending money on bringing people into this country that are coming here illegally, we're actually undermining our constitutional republic. And I think most Americans see this, and that's why there's such outrage right now. And you're seeing these large protests all over the country.
Talk to me about the chambers of commerce. Not all of them. Some of the local ones are pretty good, but at the national, the state level, and the federal level, so many of them are behind these terrible, terrible immigration plans because their businesses are going to get a lot of cheap labor. And so on the one hand, we keep hearing, right, small business owners are getting crushed. They're going to defy state law or state regulation. They're going to go out and open their businesses and risk the consequences. Meanwhile, the chambers of commerce, whose job it is to support and protect and to underpin those small business owners, are completely undercutting their efforts by supporting. And a lot of Republican chambers of commerce are doing this too. It really is a crushing situation. Why isn't there a revolt in the business community, a small business community, against these chambers?
Well, at least in this area of the country, Duke, I think there is beginning a revolt against these types of policies. And I think people are sick and tired of funding everybody else but America. I mean, look, we sent tens of millions of dollars to the Communist Chinese Party to start developing bioweapons that they have stated in General Xi's secret speech, for example, and in the memorandum written, it was 200 pages actually, by two Chinese colonels called Unrestricted Warfare, that very clearly the target of all these things was the United States of America. Quite literally, we're funding our enemies to develop things to attack us. And why would we want to do that and undermine our constitutional republic? It's insane. And I think that's why there is a revolt beginning in the business community to say, wait a minute, we need to bring back manufacturing to the United States of America. We should have quality control in America on our pharmaceuticals, for example. We should never, ever give up such a geostrategic issue to another foreign power who has publicly they are our enemy. We should keep it here in America. And if we do that, if we just bring our economy back to basic free market principles, America's going to take off. It's going to be incredible. We're going to see an ignition like we've never seen before. But the problem is, you follow the money. A lot of these policies that are being introduced, even backed by some Republicans, unfortunately, are benefiting a very few. And that very few are lining the pockets of the politicians who are voting for these policies, and it's a vicious circle.
Well, I want to underline what you just said. There's evidence that American dollars helped fund the Wuhan clinic from which this virus may have escaped. That's the first thing. And then I don't know if you've been watching the news over the last 2 weeks at the Dr. Duke Show. We've covered this. Dozens of American professors and American nationals, not necessarily Chinese professors, have been caught taking money from the Chinese, as much as $50,000 a month in one instance, to cover up what was going back and forth between the research done in America and the pirating of that in China.
That's exactly right. And, you know, the issue with North Carolina and the university there and the connections with China, if you follow it, and there's a great documentary, it's already been done on this, it's very, very clear that the United States was helping to not only fund our enemies, but give our enemy technology in modern times since the 1990s under the administration. This is just insane. We should be focusing on America first. I think there's no question about this. And this HEROES Act, everybody says, well, why would you want to vote against HEROES? Well, because this isn't about heroes. This is about zeros. And that's the way I would leave it.
Last thing I want to ask you about, the other thing that really gets me angry about this, is there is huge money going to big liberal Democrat cities who have overspent. What they're doing is they're bailing out their progressive left wing, the intellectual, the academic, the universities. They're giving all kinds of money to their left wing donor base for having mismanaged money and gotten their states into debt. Something Trump said he didn't want to do, reward bad governance. HEROES Act throws all kinds of money at already rich liberal governors and states and business people.
Right. I mean, I think that there's a fair case to be made that some of these governors are intentionally trying to destroy the economies of their states to affect national policies and national politics. And so, you know, you have $100 billion in this HEROES Act that's going to local hospitals and healthcare workers. Well, why is that? Well, it's because these governors closed the hospitals effectively. And so they were laying off people in the middle of the coronavirus issue. They were limiting hours from people. And now they have hundreds of millions of dollars of shortfall in their local budgets because of bad policies from these governors, bad governance, as you said, Duke. And the fact of the matter is we shouldn't subsidize bad governance. We should actually make sure that there is punishment for it and that it never happens again.
Matt, we've got about 30 seconds left. I want to give you the final word on this. Where do you think this is going in the House and the Senate? The House has already passed it. Where do you think is going to happen in the Senate, and what do you think Donald Trump's going to do?
Well, I think Trump needs to weigh in so that the Senate does the right thing and completely guts this thing if passes anything at all. And if they do gut it, It needs to be incentivizing manufacturing to come back to America and giving tax cuts across the board with no favoritism to all of our businesses here in the United States, our mom and pa's that have been holding this country up for so long.
Matt Shea, thanks for the interview today.
Yep, thank you.